Max Albert and Ben Carson are the co-founders of the North American Middle School Debate Circuit. This intro to the circuit is taken right from their Tabroom page. The NAMSDC is the next revolution in debate, designed to grow the middle school level to maximum competitiveness and accessibility with monthly, low-fuss, streamlined debating. The NAMSDC runs on a sports/eSports-inspired Grand Prix system, fully online and PF only. Max and Ben, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So to start, what is each of your stories in debate? How did you get started, get into debate? And how did you eventually end up meeting each other?
I guess I'll start. I've been doing debate for about 10 years now, I think. Mostly in public forum, dabbled in a few other categories at times in high school and college, but it's been PF pretty much the whole way through. I did some competition, but I would say probably most of my career has been coaching, working with students. I started off coaching students back in Indiana, both at a high school and my college. And then about 3 years ago, I moved over to New Jersey and started coaching at the Bergen County Debate Club, which is where Max and I had met, started working together.
Yeah, I started public forum debate in high school as well. Went to a small school, went to debate camps, which really helped me improve as a debater. In college, I did parliamentary debate, and I competed at Rutgers University in New Jersey. I also met Ben working at Bergen Debate, where we worked with middle schoolers and high schoolers. Ben is more modest than I am. So most recently, we coached middle school teams to win the Harvard Invitational Tournament, as well as the Tournament of Champions. We moved away from Bergen to start what we call NorthAMS. I know our acronym is somewhat difficult to pronounce. So I think NorthAMS is probably a lot easier because we think that we have a lot of ideas to help innovate in a community and activity that has defined our careers, and we hope will continue to define our careers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very impressive record. Yeah, you sent me a little bit of a sort of bio on both of you, and for real, you have like a very intense background. I think Ben, yes, 3 state titles in a row.
Yes.
That's insane. How does that happen?
I ask myself that still every single day, but I think it was right team, right students, hard work, good research, and pulled it off 3 in a row.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. When I read your email, the introduction, I was really, my first, it really was my first reaction was just like this is what needs to be done in debate. It's like debaters always like to talk, the people in the community always like to talk about, ways to improve it and complain about things and how it could be better. And this seems like, at least the skeleton, the basic ideas of what y'all want to do seem like the essential things that, in my personal opinion, are like needed to revolutionize debate. So again, I'm very happy you're doing it. How was NorthAMS? Yes, how was NorthAMS conceived? And yeah, how did y'all get started? How did the conversations get started and the planning? And now you have an LLC and a first tournament coming up. How did this whole process happen?
So I think you actually kind of already gave part of the answer, which is I think if I had to think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but I think the genesis of it does start with simply complaints. We would just talk to each other and we would complain about things. And we complained more and more. And then we started trying to put those complaints into structured ideas and then trying to find solutions for them. So it was really, this probably goes back a while of thinking about these kinds of things. And how to improve debate, and then very recently trying to put it into action.
Yeah, good stuff. So let's get into really the meat of this discussion, which is what are the essential problems that you hope to address with the league? What are the mechanisms you thought of to put it in place? How do you come up with those mechanisms? And what will it look like?
So for me, really, there are 2 core problems that we're trying to solve, and then a bunch of ancillary problems. The first problem is accessibility. The cost of in-person tournaments are deceptively high. So they will suggest that the cost is the entry fee of $100 to $150. Not true. The cost of traveling to, let's just take University of Kentucky from Massachusetts, is $850 from a team that lives in New Jersey, right? So we think that the cost of participation needs to be decreased dramatically, and online debating really helps accomplish that. So that's the first thing, is accessibility. The cost of tournaments is too damn high, and we created NorthAMS to do something about it. The second problem that I see is really a problem of lack of competitive motivation. The only students that really do debate today are ones who are willing to dedicate tens of hours to debate research, and in return, they receive plastic trophies. So what we hope to do is to gamify debate, to make it more fun and entertaining while you're debating. But then also, one thing that occurs with gamification is you have data and you can track your progress over time. So we really hope to make tournaments more accessible, as well as to leverage technology to allow debaters to improve through frequent competitions.
Oh, just real fast, I'll add maybe two other big problems of my own that I've noticed that we're trying to fix as well. In reality, there's a huge amount of complaints that we've had and a huge amount of things that we're trying to kind of address all at once. But two other big ones that stick out to me. A problem that I see in debate sometimes is what I consider to be effectively arbitrary restrictions on who can or can't debate. So different tournaments or different events will not allow certain people to compete unless they're affiliated with a certain affiliation, usually a school. But that's not always possible for a student, depending on whatever's going on with the logistics of their own school, or the person they want to debate with perhaps doesn't go to the same school as them. So debate has gotten a lot bigger. It's gotten national, international. People can communicate very easily across the internet. You can have different partners, different teammates. And so something that I don't like seeing is that some people are simply just not allowed to debate, even though they want to and they're ready to go. So we also are eliminating all of that. Anyone is able to, debate independently. So that's something important to me. And then another problem that I've noticed very recently in the last couple of years, I think this one's a little bit controversial, but it's the topic of, I'll just blanket them as progressive arguments. So theory arguments, critiques, those kinds of things that have been longstanding in policy and LD and other debate categories. They're slowly starting to creep into middle school as well. I think they have value as arguments, but typically in middle school, they seem to kind of be cheap tricks to win debate rounds. They don't go very far, and some kids are kind of locked out of competition. So we also want to be focusing on having topical debates as well on public forum.
Yeah, that I definitely want to talk about more later. I'm a big fan of theory and critiques, and that's it's not the first place, but you hear a lot of resolutions come up, and it's a very important area to think about, right? Are we in fact talking about the right question, right? Or what exactly are we doing here, right? I mean, I think it's a decent thing to ask, but it is a very good point that as your circuit is focused mainly on middle school, so every kind of competition needs rules, needs barriers, needs some kind of structure, right? If it's a free for all, then what is it, right? It's not a whole lot, right? Like you can't, move the queen off the board in chess. There are rules, and that's what makes the game beautiful, right? And so you do need to have limitations, and probably if there are some sort of extra features like theory arguments, there, as you say, they detract from the competition if they're not used well, right? And that's a very important point that you are focusing, at least for the time being, on middle school. Talking about accessibility, I think this is a very interesting point. Just any kind of a tournament or any kind of a competition that will let more people debate, I think is amazing. One of the most important, probably the most important conversation I've ever had related to debate is also on this podcast. Brianna Mazuk, who's a researcher about debate, one of two, I think, major debate researchers. And I've always had doubts, as long as I've been in debate, about the real merits of debate, because everyone sort of champions their own activity, right? And I think there's a lot of ego involved in that, right? You got to sign the kids up for baseball because it'll, give them good character, right? And teach them teamwork and blah, 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 blah. Or you got to sign kids up for saxophone lessons, because there's a great history of jazz behind it. And all activities, have some merit if people are using them, and there's some history and perhaps some lessons to be learned for kids. But I've always thought like debate might be like that. It's sort of we're all have some ego invested in it, so we try to say that it's has all these benefits that it might not have. But on looking at the research, it seems like there's very, very few educational interventions that are as effective at debate, especially in making up the gap or the difference in potential between different schools, students, classes, things like this. And so after that conversation, I've been totally a zealot of debate as something that I think needs to spread as much as possible, really as much as possible. So that is, I think, the internet first focus of the circuit is probably the biggest thing that seems very, very important to me.
Can I just add on to that just for a second? Because I think there's another component to accessibility. It's very good as an educational intervention. And that matters a lot to us. But also, a tournament is designed to find the person who is best at the activity. And we believe that the wider net that you cast, the more likely you are to discover who is truly the best middle school debater in the country. And if you require people to pay $1,000 to compete, you're going to exclude people who are genuinely good at the activity, but cannot afford competition in the status quo.
I also just characterized the circuit as internet only. Is that accurate, or internet first? Is that accurate? And what is the role of in-person debating in your tournaments, if any?
Yes, so that is accurate. I think the last 2 years, I will admit, I was highly skeptical of online debating at the start, because I'm guessing Max is the same, and I'm guessing you're the same as well, because the only kind of, at least for me, the only kind of debating that I knew was in person. I had never even considered doing it online before. I was even probably so pessimistic about it that I just thought, you can't even run a tournament online. But I think that changed pretty quickly. Like I was proven wrong pretty fast that it works well. You can have larger entry fields. It's a lot easier to facilitate these kinds of things. You're not locked by geographical restrictions or monetary restrictions. So yeah, all of that is to wrap back around to yes, the tournaments are totally online. They're not half online, half in person, like I'm noticing some tournaments are, which is a little confusing. But yeah, everything is online.
Beautiful. Let's talk about. So I think this is a really good just rundown of sort of the big features of the debate on your Tabroom page. A couple of the differences between this and, let's say, NSDA. So let's start with that, with in topicality being forced and not allowing theory or critiques. First question: how big of a problem? I mean, obviously, you all have done a lot of work on national circuit, but also very high-level state competitions. How big of a problem is it actually in public forum, I guess NSDA mostly, that theory is encroaching too much into the PF space? So that's the first question. Like, how big of a problem do you think it is? And second, how do you draw that line in your circuit?
So if I can give an anecdote, and then Ben can really elaborate on some of the structural issues with theory. One anecdote is we met personally with a relatively large middle school debate team. I won't say who. And they told us very directly, we have many younger students who are too afraid to compete at large tournaments because they believe their opponents might run paraphrasing theory, disclosure theory, trigger warning theory. And so it's hard to quantify, but many teams have said to us this is a big issue, and students feel
to clarify, this is in middle school, right?
In middle school. Yep. And so hopefully I think Ben really can elaborate on some of the wide-scale nature of theory, maybe why it's spreading, but people have certainly communicated to us at least that it is a problem that they're seeing on their teams.
Yeah, so I basically consider it a rising problem. It's not like a epidemic, so to speak, at this point in middle school debate, but it has a clear trajectory right now that I've noticed, where it's starting to get used a little bit more. And I've watched rounds where either just one team literally has no idea what's going on. It's as if the other team is speaking Spanish and they don't know Spanish. That's the gap that exists in that debate round, which is so far off from someone just reading an argument that is unconventional. So, not even in the same league. Or I see the same thing happen with the judge, where I've watched a judge panel, and one of the judges is beyond confused out of their mind as to what they're listening to. They have no idea what's happening. So I'm noticing this kind of start to happen more. As for the second question, I think it's a really good question, and it's one that I thought about for a while. But I do think there's pretty clear answers personally. So one thing that I did, so I have like K experience. I did Ks in college. I know that the theories kind of get synthesized down or watered down a little bit in PF, but yeah, I have a good background on those. And I think all you need to do, and this is what we do on the invite packet that we give out to teams, is that we basically have a clear description, kind of like case law would handle a certain court case or a certain concept in America, like free speech, for example. They will have certain tests for things that are on the boundaries, like libel and slander, and they'll have these methods that they go through to kind of understand if it's this or if it's that. So devised a similar kind of idea for the progressive arguments, and I think we have people who have like been around the bend of progressive arguments. They have a pretty good idea of when you hear it, you kind of know that it's like a theory argument. And so there's a few tests that I write out. There's a few examples that are given of what counts as one, what would not count as one. And then from there, there's obviously there's a reasonability line that comes into play, of course. But that's true of everything, including the Supreme Court. So yeah, I think we have a pretty clear line of what counts and what doesn't.
Cool. Yeah, I would not know how to draw that line, but I also don't have the responsibility you have of having to put that very deep thought into it. Let's talk about the special monthly topic. So you are choosing, I believe, different topics than NSDA or other leagues choose. How are you going to go about?
I'll just correct that a little bit. So we're sticking with the NSDA topics. But we're doing a tournament every single month. So the idea there is to be streamlining the debate where you have a tournament every single month. It's following the NSDA topics as given, but kind of changing some of the like annual structure that a lot of tournaments have.
I see. I think that's a very wise move. I'm sure it can be tempting, especially launching something as grand as a new circuit, to want to choose your own topics, because a lot of people don't like certain topics or don't like a lot of topics, or they think some topic areas are less important and maybe we shouldn't be talking about them. But there would be, the question was going to be about the tension that would exist. How students would choose the two, or how they'd allocate the time. But I guess it's a very wise move to encourage kids to actually sign up.
I will say, though we started the circuit with grievances towards the NSDA, we don't believe students have to choose between circuit tournaments and NSDA tournaments. We really just want to provide an alternative.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess people who, ideally, both the people who go to tournaments anyway can get more practice, and maybe better practice or different practice than NSDA tournaments. And then you can also, as you said, just open the floodgates to all the students who, for really a million different reasons, maybe money is a huge reason. There's plenty of other reasons you might not want to go to tournaments, that are in person or far away or just take up too much time. So, yeah, I love that. You also, in contrast to NSDA, will let anyone compete. I assume if they're, in middle school, they can compete. So, including, as you say, non-affiliated students, maybe homeschooled students who don't want to participate as part of their debate team, international students, without kind of all those limitations. On the face of it, that sounds amazing. And in fact, I don't even know any reasons it wouldn't be amazing. But what is the original purpose to limiting students to their school clubs and only to being able to enroll through their schools? And do you think there might be anything that you're losing by just allowing anyone to compete?
So I guess I'll start by saying it's not that we don't like the idea of schools competing together. It's not like we want everyone to be an independent entry. So, in an ideal world, I think we're totally okay with teams having a school or a club that they can be competing a part of. Because you get camaraderie, you get team spirit, you get prep help across the board. So in general, if someone's truly independent, they probably are, starting a leg behind, and getting good at debate, or learning everything they need to know. But of course, the reality is very different. The reality is that there are lots of students that don't have a debate team, or they don't have a partner. And there's lots of other ways to get partners, and there's lots of other ways to compete. So yeah, I think we mostly see it as an upside. I think really the only things that you're potentially losing is some kind of team collaboration, but you could still have that anyway. Part of with Northam. And I guess there's some kind of connection or incentive to, become a member school of the NSDA, for example. But truthfully, those kinds of things, you don't. Debate just needs your voice, right? So debate doesn't need certain memberships or certain amounts of things. So we want to kind of pare those things down as much as we can.
I also think that the idea that teams would compete with people who are in a single geographical area is somewhat a vestige of in-person debate. And the beautiful thing about virtual debating is that you're no longer constrained by where you happen to be born or where you happen to move. And so we just don't see a reason really to require people to only compete with someone who goes to their local school instead of their best friend who lives across the country. And so we think virtual debating offers a lot of really exciting opportunities, this being one of them.
Very cool. Yeah, I guess that does make sense. The NSDA has been around, I don't know how long, but decades for sure. I don't know, 60s, 50s, I don't know when it started.
I think it's like 100 years, yeah.
Okay. So for a bit, and things were certainly much different back then. Part of my intuition is that there's some motivation to not let debate just go all private, because there's a huge private debate industry. I guess that's, most of it, anything outside of school clubs, and, if you're allowing, for example, private coaches, to just start their own teams and start, submitting all their students to your league and have them compete there, then, well, I don't know. I also don't know if that would be bad, but actually that might be really good.
Yeah, I guess I'll just.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I'll just comment on this really fast, and I assume Max has a similar belief. I think there's like pros and cons to privatization of things. They're probably fairly obvious ones. And it's totally correct. Like, this is the thought that I had as well when we were starting this idea, that it would mostly be just kind of a sort of the private spaces of debate. I've been pretty surprised so far. Actually, like half of the people who have been interested in our activity or in our circuit, and the ones I've actually gotten like detailed emails from thanking us, have been not meant in like an insulting way, but just schools I've never heard of. They're just these small schools somewhere in another state, and so I'm like, okay, wow, this. I kind of thought this could happen, but didn't really realize it could happen, which is that actually in the public space has been extremely helpful, because if you live or you go to some small school in a certain state that doesn't have as much of an infrastructure for debate, what are your options? You don't really have any options for debating. And so we've actually gotten a few independent entries from small schools, a couple of small schools themselves who have signed up some kids. So I'm happy to see that it's kind of doing both the public and the private.
And truthfully, if you look at the teams that win NSDA nationals, often these are private schools with enormous coaching staffs. And so we really don't see the status quo as being a haven of accessible debate where everyone is treated equally with a level playing field. We see the status quo as large private or public schools who dominate small public or private schools. But the truth is, this massively increases accessibility. And we have some experience in the private debate scene too. These schools are often generous with scholarships. And so even students who can't necessarily afford to go to a very expensive school often will have their tuition subsidized, and we provide a space for them to compete. When the NSDA says to private clubs, we're not even going to let you compete at NSDA nationals. So we think the accessibility gains are pretty significant. And right now, big schools nonetheless still win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Final question, I guess, is a little bit abstract. So it's just, you're doing a big thing. You're at the very early stage of something potentially huge. And it is, I guess anytime you go on, you have an idea and you start some kind of a venture, it is risky, perhaps dangerous. I mean, it could fail, right? Like you could invest an enormous amount of time and energy and money, pursuing something that eventually, fizzles out or doesn't catch on. But maybe equally scary, it could work. It could work really well, and you can find yourself with just, an enormous amount of responsibility for, thousands of students' educational outcomes in your hands. So I guess when you think about, sort of the extreme versions of what this might turn into, sort of pipe dream success, uh, what does that look like for you? Like, what do you truly like deeply? You have a magical wand. What would you love to this to turn into?
I guess I'll start. I'll start with the pessimistic side because I think that matches me a little more, and then I'll let Max do the optimistic side because I think that also matches him a little bit more as well. So as far as the pessimistic side goes, I definitely have a kind of a catastrophic sort of mindset. So I thought about that a lot myself. But fortunately, I see the pessimistic side still is not that bad. Worst case scenario is that we put some time into attempting to experiment and how to make debate better. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we learned something from it. Maybe we incentivized other parts of the debate community to change some of their rules or to add a few tweaks to make the debate space better. And so I think even in the worst case scenario of it not being successful, that I'm pretty happy with the attempt that we've made.
Okay. All I will add is this. I don't see failure as an option. And I encourage everyone who's listening to check back in 10 years and see where we are.
This could really be the start. I mean, it's obviously this circuit is potentially very disruptive. As you said, the NSDA has been the big dog and for 100 years ish, and there's some other leagues. None of them are as big as the NSDA. I guess a lot of them have their place, but as far as are you the first ones to really go for this? I mean, I guess the debate online has started the last couple of years, and NSDA has certainly made the adaptation fairly well, but it is still sort of the organization that it's been for a long time. Do you know anyone else trying something at scale like you all are?
Yeah, I think we've looked around at a lot of stuff, and we've noticed a few different organizations or events that what I would say are doing like a small piece of the pie of the things that we're looking at. But yeah, without trying to sound like too braggadocious, yeah, I think that nobody else has put it all together like this. I think that the last 2 years have dramatically changed how we look at the economy, how we interact with people, and we've tried to find different ways to alleviate that or innovate new ways. And there's been a couple good ideas that we've noticed, but I don't think anyone's put it all together yet. And I think we have figured out what the right recipe for that is. And we hope that we can really push it to that next level and be successful.
Amen. That's beautiful. How can people learn more? How can they sign up? What are the details, times, dates, places, prices? How can we get started?
NAMSDC.org.
That's right. So yeah, we have our website on the NAMSDC.org, North American Middle School Debate Circuit. We might consider some other branding options later to make it a little bit easier to keep track of all these sorts of things. But you can find us on the website. The website has a ton of different information on it. I spent a long time typing lots of different blurbs, so hopefully some people would read that. It's got all the detail that you could want. It's also going to be where the website's going to display things like keeping track of your results that you have at the tournament or getting some of your virtual badges, all those kinds of things as well, having a personalization to it that's, I think, been lacking in debate as well. So the website will have that. And then, of course, the tournament as well is listed on Tabroom. So if you scroll down and look for North American Middle School Debate Circuit Early Access, that's our first tournament. That tournament's happening in 2 weeks. We have registration that is still open. There are still slots to file in. The early access event is designed to kind of give people a quick entry into what we're doing, getting off the ground running. As we had mentioned before with like badges and keeping track of points and a profile and all those kinds of things, we want to give a special reward. We can't say yet, but you'll find out after the tournament. But there'll be some special rewards, the people who will get who start us off in September. But then following that, it's a tournament every single month. So in general, the tournament is the second to last weekend of every month. So you can kind of have a guess as to when our tournaments are. But on the website, it has the full schedule as well, all the way through the next calendar year, including the Grand Championship, all the way at the very end.
Great. And what is the price for these tournaments, for the early access and subsequent tournaments? And I guess they can sign up on the website, right? NAMSDC. I'll definitely put links in the description. NAMSDC.org. Sign up there, right?
The cost of this tournament is $20, and the cost of future tournaments will be $40. Much, much cheaper than our competitors.
Yes, very hard to beat that. All right, beautiful. Been really good talking to you, and I wish you the best of luck. And I very much encourage anyone watching this to sign up. You could be very early in on something very, very big.
Thank you.